Okay, in this video we're going to talk about different fuels for your camp stoves. Okay, there's a bunch of different fuels that you have. Maybe I should organize these here a little bit. You got some of the most popular fuels out there are alcohol fuels. Okay, and then we represent those here with some denatured alcohol in the Trangia bottle and some methanol in the form of yellow bottle heat. Okay, the difference here is the SLX alcohol claims to be mostly ethanol, okay, with a little bit of denaturants, which is typically some methanol, but sometimes some other stuff. I've never had a problem with it, but I've definitely heard of people who've had problems with this stuff burning inconsistently. If I gave you one bit of advice about the denatured alcohol, the advice would be to get stuff that is designed for use as a stove fuel, okay? Because maybe they'll be less likely to put chemical of the week in there to denature the ethanol and make it so they don't have to have a liquor tax on it. Okay, so you got your alcohol fuels, and then you got your petroleum-based fuels over here, starting with Coleman fuel, okay, K1 kerosene, and another popular one is some version of butane-propane mix, this being the MSR Isopro. And then finally, solid fuel tablets, which I have represented by these Esbit brand. Okay. Okay. Alcohol fuel is very popular. It's very popular because the stoves are very simple and the stoves can be made very lightweight and small. But one of the things you have to keep in mind for any kind of durational type thing, if you're going to use an alcohol stove in your preps, in your emergency kits, in a bug-in situation especially, is that alcohol is bulky. You know, an alcohol stove is known for being very compact and very simple and everything like that, but the thing you have to remember about alcohol is that this fuel has half the heat potential of the petroleum variants. Okay? Of these three, I believe butane has the highest heat potential. But you run into issues with that in cold temperatures. You know, they try and monkey around with it by mixing some propane in here. See, propane will boil at somewhere around negative 44 Fahrenheit. But butane, okay, boils somewhere right around freezing. Between 30 and 32 is the boiling point of butane. And that's a problem because if this canister gets down to a very cold ambient temperature, if you have temperatures like we've had here in western New York over the last couple of weeks, you know, if this thing is at ambient temperature, there's no way that fuel is going to vaporize. The propane might vaporize, and you think, well, that's okay. Once the propane gets going, the rest of it will go. But that's not the way these work, these piggyback stoves, because you have evaporative cooling. As the propane boils off, it doesn't warm up the butane. It cools the butane off. Remember in the summertime when you're running the propane grill and you get that frost in the middle of 90-degree heat on the outside of the tank? It's because evaporative cooling will actually cause the tank to cool down. Now, sometimes you'll see mountaineers like set these in a bowl of liquid water, and the liquid water will actually act like a heat buffer, a thermal buffer, to keep this from getting too cold. The problem is, what if you don't have liquid water? What if the point of having a camp stove in that situation is to get liquid water? So, tell you what, U.S. Antarctic program lists 0 whatever fuel blend of these on their camp stoves. What they burn runs on these two, Coleman fuel and kerosene, with Coleman fuel being the most convenient one to use because you can self-prime a stove with Coleman fuel. Okay, self-priming with kerosene is possible if you have a wick underneath the burner to soak up some kerosene and light it. It's a very dirty business. It can be done in emergencies. I would not recommend using diesel fuel. Typically, a stove that will burn kerosene will also burn diesel fuel. I do not recommend it at all. Okay, so if you're going to use a liquid petroleum fuel, this is what I'm going to recommend right here. Alcohol is good for short-term situations. Okay, alcohol stoves are very popular on the Appalachian Trail. The stoves are very simple and generally very lightweight. Like a cat stove, something like that line. A lot of the bottle stoves, very lightweight. Okay, and here's the key: that that disadvantage we talked about with the bulk of the alcohol fuels is not so much a disadvantage if you're going to be able to resupply every 2 to 5 days, as is pretty typical on the Appalachian Trail. And also, if you're traveling with a bunch of people, when you get on the Appalachian Trail, you end up falling in with people who are going at your pace. And it might not even be the people that you went on the trail with. You might end up with completely different people. But over time, the time you guys spend on the trail, the nights you spend in the shelters, it is totally possible for people to share real resources. It happens all the time. Okay? And plus, there's some people who are just looking to get rid of weight, So there you go. Heat is nice because it comes in a convenient bottle. I like putting this in emergency kits and disaster kits because it's a fairly robust bottle. I don't know how much I would trust it once it's open, once the seal is broken. I would definitely carry it right side up after that. Okay? And a word on the fuel tablets. Okay? Fuel tablets have their place. They have their place, if you have a minimalist kit, like, say, this canteen kit with a canteen cup and stove, Esbit tablets are good for that, to give you a couple of boils. It's very expensive per unit boiled. It is the most expensive by far of everything on this table. Okay? You may have a hard time boiling a cup full of water with one of these tablets. You may find that you end up using 2 of the tablets, to get an optimal burn. And also, you may find that you're only trying to warm the water up. You're not trying to boil it. Okay? So if you're just trying to warm it up, generally one of these will do you for a canteen cup full. If you're trying to boil like a quart of water, you might need a few of these. So the other advantage of the solid fuel, and why you sometimes see that on Appalachian Trail, is you can mail it fairly easily. There have to be no special precautions for mailing that. All these other things are pretty much hazmat or ORMD or whatever type of hazardous things to carry around. Okay, and because it doesn't need any kind of bottle, it's fairly lightweight. They started making these individually packaged, which is kind of nice. The other kind of fuel tabs you might run into are those Army trioxane. Basically, this is hexamine. These Esbit tablets. Okay, it's a high quality hexamine. Trioxane is what was used by the U.S. military a lot of times in their canteen cookers. Is they had that trioxane stuff. That stuff you're going to find that less and less because the surplus market is drying up. They quit using them. They're going to quit making it if they haven't already. They probably have because they've come out with those gel fuels. But those had all kinds of issues. They're easy to light, but the little foil packs could form like little pinholes in them, and then it would actually evaporate while it was in your kit. So that's no good. This stuff is pretty stable. You can actually blow that stuff out. If you get done cooking what you want to cook, you can blow Esbit tablets out, and hexamine in general. Okay? Hexamine is not really good for use indoors. It's kind of smelly. Even the Esbit tablets are kind of smelly, though I will say they're probably the least smelly of all the different ones I've tried. So, frankly, it makes me nauseous indoors, and that's not good. So, you have that going on. The cheapest, if this is the most expensive, the cheapest is the kerosene, by far. Okay? You can buy this at a gas station from a pump. I try and get the undyed, because just the undyed stuff is well, the reason they dye kerosene is so truckers don't try and use it in their trucks. And the times when kerosene sometimes is cheaper than diesel fuel, because diesel engines are run kerosene generally. It's not always the best thing for them, but kerosene can be had for $4 or so per gallon. The SLX is about $15 a gallon last I checked, and one of the problems with that is that it seems like it's only a little bit more expensive than the $10 Coleman fuel, but it takes twice as much of this to equal the same volume of this. So all of a sudden it's $30 and you have to carry 2 gallons if you want the same heat potential of 1 gallon for $10 this. So it's not really an issue for like a weekend backpacking trip. Any of these would work for a weekend backpacking trip. But if you're trying to put stuff aside for preps, that's something to consider about the alcohol, is you have to have a lot of it to equal this. And this is way cheaper, okay? And, you know, of the two of them, you know, this is safer actually to store than either of these two. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Any questions? You know, mark them in the comments. Thanks for watching.